The charity gala was already in full swing when James burst through the ballroom doors, his tie crooked and rain dripping from his hair. He was 40 minutes late, which meant he'd missed the dinner seating, the opening speeches, and most importantly, the moment when everyone else had already chosen their dance partners for the evening's main event. His business partner had insisted he attend this fundraiser, practically begged him to show up and make connections. But a crisis at the hospital where he worked as a surgeon had kept him in the operating room far longer than expected. He scanned the glittering crowd, feeling completely out of place. Men in perfect tuxedos waltzed with women in designer gowns across the marble floor. The orchestra played something classical and elegant. Everything sparkled with old money and social grace, two things James had never possessed despite his successful career. He'd grown up in a trailer park, put himself through medical school on scholarships and midnight shift jobs. These people could smell it on him, he was sure. Then he noticed her, sitting alone at a table in the corner, partially hidden behind a decorative column, while everyone else glided across the dance floor in pairs. She sat with her hands folded in her lap, watching the scene with an expression he recognized too well. It was the same look he'd worn at every social event in medical school, the outsider trying to appear unbothered by being excluded. She wasn't traditionally beautiful by the standards of this crowd. She was heavier than the willowy women twirling in silk gowns. Her dress, while pretty, was clearly off the rack rather than custom-made. Her hair was styled simply, without the elaborate updos the other women wore. But there was something in her face, a quiet dignity mixed with resigned sadness, that pulled at something deep in his chest. James had been that person, the scholarship kid at the fancy school, the resident eating vending machine dinners while his colleagues went to expensive restaurants, the doctor from nowhere trying to prove he belonged in rooms full of legacy admissions and trust funds. He walked straight toward her table, ignoring the curious glances from the crowd. As he got closer, he could hear the whispered comments from a nearby group of women, their voices carrying more than they probably intended. "That's Margaret Chen," her father insisted she come. "He donated a fortune to the foundation. She doesn't fit in here. Look at her just sitting there. I heard 3 men turned her down for the partner dance. Mortifying." Margaret's face remained composed, but James saw her shoulders tighten slightly. She'd heard them too. The orchestra was transitioning into a new song and the MC's voice boomed across the ballroom announcing the next dance, a tradition where everyone was supposed to have a partner, a symbolic gesture of unity and support for the cause. James reached her table and extended his hand. "I'm late, underdressed, and I can barely dance. Would you save me from complete humiliation by being my partner?" Margaret looked up at him, surprise flickering across her features. Her eyes were a striking amber color, intelligent and wary. "You don't have to do this. I'm fine sitting here." "I'm not doing this because I have to," James said, keeping his hand extended. "I'm doing this because I want to. Because I've been the person sitting alone at parties full of people who think they're better than me. And because honestly, you're the only person in this room I actually want to dance with." Something shifted in her expression. She studied his face carefully, perhaps looking for pity or mockery, but he kept his gaze steady and sincere. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. The ballroom seemed quiet as they walked to the dance floor together. James felt the eyes on them, heard the whispers intensify. He didn't care. He placed one hand on Margaret's waist and took her hand with the other, and as the music began, they started to move. "I really can't dance very well," he admitted quietly. "Fair warning, neither can I," she said, and for the first time, he saw a small smile cross her lips. "We can be terrible together." They were both stiff at first, self-conscious under the weight of so many watching eyes, but gradually as the music swelled, something changed. James found himself actually talking to her, asking about her work. She was a civil engineer, she told him, designing infrastructure for underserved communities. Her father had built a fortune in real estate, but she'd chosen to use her education to help people who needed it most. "That's why I'm here," she said softly. "This foundation funds clean water projects in developing countries. My father thinks I should marry well and join the social circuit. I think I should build wells and sewage systems. We compromise by me attending events like this while he writes enormous checks." "You're extraordinary," James said, and meant it. Margaret stumbled slightly, and he steadied her. "You don't even know me. I know you care more about clean water for strangers than impressing people who are worth impressing. I know you sat through humiliation with grace. I know you took a chance on dancing with a disaster like me." He smiled. "That's enough to know you're someone special." The song ended, but neither of them let go. The orchestra began another piece, and they kept dancing. Other couples moved around them, but James barely noticed. They talked about their work, their backgrounds, their dreams. Margaret told him about a water project in Kenya that needed funding. James told her about the free clinic he ran on weekends in his old neighborhood. Hours passed like minutes. When the gala finally ended, James walked Margaret to her car, neither of them ready to say goodbye. Under the streetlights, with the rain starting again, he took a chance. "Can I see you again? Not at some fancy party, just coffee or dinner, somewhere we can actually talk." Margaret looked at him with those remarkable amber eyes, and he saw hope mixing with caution. "Why me? You could have chosen anyone in there, because everyone else was performing," James said simply. You were real, and I've spent my whole life around people wearing masks. I'm tired of it." She kissed him then, soft and brief, tasting of champagne and possibility. Coffee sounds perfect. 3 years later, James stood in a community center in Kenya, watching his wife cut the ribbon on a new water treatment facility. Margaret was radiant in practical clothes and work boots, more beautiful than she'd ever been in that gown. The village children danced around them, celebrating clean water that would change their lives. Sometimes the best choice isn't the easy one or the expected one. Sometimes it's the person everyone else overlooks. The one sitting in the corner, waiting for someone brave enough to see past surfaces to the extraordinary soul beneath. James had arrived late to that gala, but he'd been right on time for the moment that changed everything.